Welcome to episode 14 of Cougar Dash. I'm Cody Schoeler here, as always, with my co-host Ryan Root, ready to talk about everything Cougar football. Ryan, I know you have something you want to get out of the way about the other WSU sport going on right now, or one of the others. So go for it, and then we'll jump into it.
Well, of course, Cody, thanks for passing it off. I want to give a quick shout out to Morgan over at Beaver Dash for losing yet another bet that he's made against WSU. He lost the hair, but he's going to lose a little bit of his dignity on the next Beaver Dash episode. We made a bet that you had to draw the school's initials of the winning team on the opposite host's forehead. So if Oregon State won their basketball game last night, I would have had OSU up here, but Morgan's going to have some Cougar pride on Beaver Dash, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But I just want to say maybe my predictions for football may not be too consistent, but I'm 2-0 with the bets at least.
Yeah,
so,
you'd think that at some point he would maybe try to pick on or mess with somebody else because it's just not working out for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to get into it. Back to football, which I know might seem weird because we've gone like almost 3 weeks without it. Obviously we were off last week because of Thanksgiving, but there wasn't even a game to talk about. So I've missed it. I think a lot of people have missed it. And so I want to talk about the breakout players. Obviously we've only played, we're over halfway through the season, but WSU has only played 2 games. So maybe it's a little early, but I think it's enough time to kind of see who's really like stood out this year. So who do you got?
Well, as much as I'd love to pick McIntosh, who you'll talk about in just a moment, and as much as I'd love to pick Delora, that'd be a little too easy, right?
That's the easy one. That's the easy one.
Yeah, so as much as I'd love to pick Delora, I will go onto the receiver. Renard Bell, I think, has definitely shown out this year in terms of being a more, number 1, number 2 weapon for WSU, as opposed to previous years we had, Tay Martin or Desmond Patman or Arconato. Renard Bell, I think, has stepped up pretty nice with his game. I mean, we've only played 2 games. He's got over 200 yards receiving and only on the 1 touchdown for him, but he's averaged around 500, high 400 receiving yards every season ever since being at WSU. So he's almost halfway there. We played 2 games as opposed to 13. So he's definitely showing out as being one of those top weapons for WSU so far this year. And I think he's definitely one of the breakout players for this WSU team. Of course, not Delora, but why don't you talk a little bit about McIntosh?
Yeah. First, I just want to say, Renard, he's leading the conference in yards per game at like over 100. So
with 2 games, just keep that in mind. But yes, so we got to take our wins where we can get them.
So a normal season, like he's on pace for like over like 1,000 yards. Like the stats are going to look weird at the end of this year because it's going to be like, in WSU's case, like maybe just 5 games. So you've got to look at the averages because those are what matter. And so, like you mentioned, I'm going with Deon McIntosh. Kind of the easy answer. I mean, he's been the clear breakout guy for this team. I took the easy one because I wrote about him. So, if I'm going to write 800 words about a guy, I'm going to pick the one with a lot to talk about. So I'm going with Deon McIntosh, obviously. He's got 239 rushing yards, which, like at this point in the season, in a normal season, would still seem like a lot for a WSU running back. But in 2 games, that's insane. I mean, he went for 147 in game 1, the best rushing performance since like 2007. And like I said, those averages matters because he's 6th in the league in rushing, which is impressive. But if you look at the guys above him, most of those guys in front of him have played 4 games. I think one of them has played 3. So, he's on the pace. His pace. If he would have played 4 games, he'd be 3rd right now in rushing yards. And that's against Oregon and Oregon State doesn't have a good rush defense, but Oregon's a pretty good defense. So maybe those numbers would be even better. But he's I think 7 yards per carry, which is pretty insane. I think he's got 34 carries, which isn't a lot. But of the guys that have more carries than him, which is I think 6 or 7 guys, or I think 6 running backs, he's only behind Jamar Jefferson, who is running away with Offensive Player of the Year right now. So if you're going to tell me that Deon McIntosh is 0.4 yards less efficient than this guy who's been tearing everybody up, I think I would take that. I think he's been really insane. And just to go with the breakout, nobody thought that he would even be doing much, not because of skill, but because we thought he'd be behind Max Borghi. So he's been a true breakout in the fact that, he came in week 1 and surprised everybody, including WSU fans.
Yeah, and speaking of Jamar Jefferson, we definitely have to give a shout out to Oregon State taking down the Ducks. I think it's fantastic that we've now gotten rid of the Ducks CFP tour as far as the Pac-12 season was concerned. But let's see what we got a comment here in the chat. Cougars D is ranked 8th in the Pac-12. It is, and we did have to play the number 11th team in the nation and give up 200 rushing yards to Jamar Jefferson. But
hey, not last.
It's not last. It's not
last.
Whatever. Yeah, it's not whatever rank that we were last year in terms of the nation. We were like 116th or something like that.
Yeah. Not very close.
Progress, whether it's by little chunks or big chunks, I'll take it, right? I'm not going to put much blame on the Wyoming defensive coordinator.
But also, you can see why we both picked breakout players on the offensive side of the ball. It's still an offensive team for the time being.
As much as we wanted to pick Aiden Hector after his great game against Oregon, it's one game, right? These two players that we've mentioned have great performances in both the games they've played. I'll probably say Deion McIntosh has a bit more of an impressive performance as far as he's rushing the ball, Renard Bell's receiving the ball. But I'll be honest with you, Cody. As much as I think McIntosh has played really well, if Borghi was in his position, it would be even better, and it's not a knock on McIntosh necessarily, even though it kind of is, saying that Borghi's the better running back, but I don't think there's much debate there. But, if Borghi was in that position, which of course, shout out to him, he returns to practice this week. It's great to see that. If Borghi was in his position, we're talking about a considerable competitor with Jamar Jefferson, CJ Verdell as one of the conference's top rushers this season. We've only played 2 games. Am I going to say that Borghi would have had more rushing yards than McIntosh? Maybe, maybe not. Receiving yards, I bet you he would have. Yeah. And if Borghi was in his position, he'd definitely be that breakout player. And as much as I love McIntosh, it's anybody can run with a good offensive line, which I don't think there's many doubters that WSU has a great offensive line, but McIntosh has been playing great, but you put Borghi in that position, it would have been even better, if you ask me.
And I think that's part of the reason that makes him such a breakout is the fact that, Max Borghi comes back this week. McIntosh is still involved. Like, this really came out of nowhere. Like, we saw flashes of him last year, but he just took an opportunity that he got and ran with it. Yes, Borghi is up there with the best running backs in the conference, but I think McIntosh is up there right now. I think when Borghi comes back, WSU is going to have 2 of the top 10 for sure, if not, maybe even top 6 to 8 running backs. So, I think that's what makes him such a breakout is because, this was somebody that was on nobody's radar. And now, he's a considerable threat for this offense. So I think, that is what's so surprising out of it. That's what makes it a true breakout. Not that, a guy stepping up into an expanded role that we knew was coming is any less of a breakout. But there's a lot of things he's doing. Just some of the things that maybe are, you don't see. He does run a little differently than Borghi. I think he runs a lot more powerfully, breaks some more tackles, but he's shown an ability to pass block. This is something new in this offense. Obviously, we haven't seen Max Borghi do it, but it's little things like that and his ability to do that that's going to keep him involved in this offense. Even when Max Borghi comes back, Deion McIntosh, we're still going to see him getting 10 to 12 touches a game because he's proven that he's up there with some of the most talented backs.
I want to make sure I pay attention to the chat here. Pretty sure USC's defense is better this year. Now their defense may be better, but we'll get into how I think they're a bit overrated this year. That's just me, but of course we'll get into that. Make sure you stick around. And I'm bummed you guys didn't play the Apple Bowl. Yeah, the Apple Cup is probably one of the most historic college rivalries in college sports history. Honestly, I mean, the fact that the last time we even played the Apple Cup was in what, World War II, right? Like, it's
Mhm.
that alone can show how much of a bleep show 2020 is, you
Mhm.
know. And
You're cutting into the next segment a little bit there, Ryan. So I'm gonna cut you off. We'll transition and then we'll go right back to that because I want to know your predictions for the rest of the season. You can predict anything. So I know I've got a couple. One of them involving that Apple Cup. So do you have a prediction about the Apple Cup? It, I'm wondering.
well, was not expecting. I shouldn't say I wasn't expecting the Apple Cup to get canceled. I think with the amount of issues that we had, it was only
Hmm.
right to cancel it just for the safety of the players. But um, I'd be surprised if it gets rescheduled. I know it's a historic game, and not only WSU fans want to see it, but I'm sure UW fans want what they
Oh yeah.
call an easy win. But
Hmm.
I'll leave that to a future episode if we get an Apple Cup. But
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if it gets rescheduled,
Hmm.
honestly, because I number one, I think it's hard to reschedule a game just in general, not only with the NFL's part, canceling
Hmm.
the Steelers Ravens game about 10 times until they got to play a nice boring game last night, but that's for professional athletes. These are student athletes who not only have, you know, class, but they're not primarily athletes, right? They're not paid professional athletes. I mean, rescheduling a game for professional athletes is already difficult enough, but I'd be surprised if we get a rescheduled Apple Cup. That, let alone getting a rescheduled Stanford game. Uh, I bet you Pat Chun, the athletic director for WSU, I bet you he's probably doing everything in his power to try to get some sort of Apple Cup together, um,
Hmm.
whether it be that Week 7 TBA opponent that we get to face. That could be something, but I'd be surprised if it gets rescheduled. I'll be honest.
So I did write this and make this prediction before Oregon lost to Oregon State, which puts a bit of which dampens that a little bit. But I did say that I think the Apple Cup will be played in Week 7, and basically from what I'm hearing is that this game is a high priority for both teams and for the conference. So if neither team is in the Pac-12 championship game, they're going to play this in Week 7. Now,
That makes sense to me, at least. I
so
mean,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
and so it's going to come down to Oregon versus UW. I don't think UW loses to Stanford this week, so we can rule it off. Oregon's loss makes it a little bit more difficult. Utah's absolute failure of his second half against UW also makes it a lot difficult because they're still undefeated. UW is. So whatever the opposite of a shout out is, that goes out to Oregon and Utah because they are ruining our chances to win. Because I also predicted that WC would win. I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't want us to jinx it, but I'm still holding out hope that we see this game played in Week 7. And I don't know. This is me being very optimistic. Do you have another prediction for the rest of the season? I've got a couple. And comment in the chat: the Ducks are overrated. I think everybody in the Pac-12 is overrated right now. I said recently that nobody deserves to be in first place in the Pac-12. It should be COVID at number 1, and then like maybe USC at number 2. Like nobody deserves to be the best team in the Pac-12 right now.
It's funny you acknowledge that comment. I was just about to acknowledge that Scott Rodriguez going off in the chat. We'd love to have some
Yeah.
chat interaction here, but Ducks are overrated. You couldn't tell me more. I mean, I know watching that Oregon game a couple weeks back, about the only thing I really could have said that was impressive from Oregon is, yeah, they know how to run the ball and they know how to give the ball to the running backs. Tyler Shuck is really good at passing off that screen pass to their 3 running backs, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think Oregon it should definitely be a top 25 team just with their defense alone. Although that didn't work out too well for them against the Beavers. Shout out to Oregon State once again. I got to do it at least a couple times this show. I was real excited that they got to knock them out. But
It ruined our Apple Cup chances. As a WSU fan, I was angry about that. But give me a prediction. Give me a prediction for the rest of the season. You've got full reign to predict anything you want.
without dabbing into our final topic too much,
Mhm.
where we preview the USC matchup, I I don't think we get another game canceled. Honestly, I think WSU football has kind of had a is kind of had a reality check with things going
Mm-hmm.
on. We have basketball going on. Women's basketball's had a little bit of a hiccup with their game this week, but that wasn't on the WSU side. Apparently, Stanford's having some trouble in the women's basketball scene. But I think WSU has kind of had a reality check here. If players want to play, you got to stay healthy. You got to social distance. We're at almost all times basically to
Mm-hmm.
get a game going on. I think the Apple Cup getting canceled was a real eye opener
Yeah.
for this program, because the moment you cancel our most famous game every year, I think they almost recognize that this is pretty much their duty
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that they stay healthy and give fans, not necessarily give fans a product. I'm sure they want to compete too. They wouldn't be here at WSU if they didn't want to play for WSU.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is a reality check, and I think we get at least these two games coming up in the third to be announced
Mm-hmm.
game. I think we get to play these 3 games.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the USC game, that seems like it's going to be happening. That's WSU's last time going to California, which is where a lot of the problems are right now, with just different restrictions being put in place. So Cal's coming here the week after, which shouldn't be a problem. And then that week 7 game, I think, is going to be. I mean, they can schedule that, however. So I think they're going to make sure that that happens. So I agree with that, and I think they get 5 games played. Probably don't make a bowl game. But along with that, one of my other predictions is I think Delora is still going to win Offensive Freshman of the Year in the conference. Getting those 5 games, I think, is important. I think missing those 2 games hurts his cause. But, I mean, he could still have better numbers than Dylan Morris and play less games. The UW quarterback he's been getting the Freshman Player of the Week awards since WSU hasn't been playing. I think they kind of have a stranglehold on those awards. So I think we see Delora get back to that with a good game against USC, follow that up against Cal, and then whoever they play in week 7. I think there's not a lot of freshmen that are doing much to threaten him. I think if he plays all 7, he runs away with it. But I think this is still his award to lose, and I don't expect him to lose it.
Now, I definitely agree with you. Delora, if he was playing this whole time, would definitely have he'd have this award, ran away with. But
Yeah.
I definitely agree. There's no real debate there. But let's see. Rodriguez again says Colorado and UCLA, along with OSU, deserve a little credit for improvement.
Well,
I'll
if
give you
OSU
it on
deserves credit, then we deserve credit because we
yeah.
freaking beat them. So show up.
Yes,
But
I can agree with Colorado and OSU. You can't get too much UCLA praise on this show after last year's catastrophe, but UCLA, if I'm sure they've improved in some sort of category. You can't win a game against Cal without some sort of improvement to that program. But not a big DTR fan. I'll let you know. He's a Cam Newton wannabe, if you ask me. But
it's hard to impress me in this conference when Colorado, they're undefeated, but there's not a lot of quality wins in this conference. So I'm not really that impressed because I think everybody kind of sucks this year. But yes, I think that the Pac-12 is going to have next year in a full season is going to have some surprising teams up there.
I would say I'd love to see a in week 7. I know it's a to be announced conference matchup. I would if Utah's opponent, whoever that may be, doesn't get to play, or even if that to be announced game can go non-conference, if it's in a home game, right? I think it's the stipulation.
Yeah.
I'd love to see Utah and BYU duke it out.
Yeah.
BYU is.
I think, yeah.
All Utah fans just have this strong bonds with their respective schools. I'd love to see Utah and BYU duke it out, but I'll keep my fingers crossed for that.
Yeah, and Utah was taking a strong stance against BYU before they played, but now that they've played 2 games and not looked very good, I think they've kind of backed that up against BYU. But so I'm going to move on to talking about this game against USC. It's kind of another prediction because I want to start out with saying even 2 weeks ago I thought WSU was going to win this game. Not even looking at on paper matchups numbers. I'm talking strictly from a narrative perspective of Jaden DeLora coming off, COVID, 2 missed games, USC riding high, undefeated, trap rivalry game. This game's being played on a weird Sunday. I think this is when WSU goes, "Oh, you think you understand the Pac-12? Well, guess again, because we're gonna beat USC. We're gonna cause the freaking Pac-12 South champion to be Colorado." And I think WSU is just gonna, mess stuff up. Oregon State did it. Nobody else has really done it yet, but I think this is WSU's chance to mess it up. Just from a narrative perspective, the freshman gets a big win in LA. WSU likes to ruin USC's chances. But yeah, we can get into maybe some more technical stuff because that's all based on just hope.
No, I can't deny the feeling in the air feeling that you have. I for one kind of have that feeling with some games I'll watch. If I watch my team on TV, I'll say, well, this may be a bit of a mismatch to some people, but there's just something in the air. I think it's just going to work out.
The sports
I agree with
gods
you on
love
that.
drama. They just love whoever's pulling the strings up there. They love to they love to create some nice storylines and some drama. So I'm expecting that.
On the USC side of things, though, I mean, you can't convince me that this is a good top 25 team, and I'll say it. And maybe we can cause some drama for your guys' collab show this weekend, but I just don't buy USC at all. If they weren't as lucky as they were weeks 1 and 2, they'd be 1 and 2 right now. I mean, they beat a Utah team that didn't get to play the first 2 weeks, and they have a complete uphill battle to face this season after having such a great year last year.
Mm-hmm.
You can't convince me USC is this great of a team when they almost lost to Arizona. They were a lucky final, 4 or 5 minutes away from losing to ASU.
Well,
ASU's a great team. I'm not talking them.
They've perfected the wide receiver tips the ball to the other wide receiver play that has essentially won them both games.
Yeah, you can't convince me this team is really a top 25 scary team. I was more scared of Oregon than USC. I'll be perfectly honest. Slovis is a great quarterback and all, but even then, y'all were saying Slovis for Heisman and this and that after his great freshman year, but I just don't see it. I know that this season is unlike any other, and we don't get double-digit games this season, and there's a decent risk of losing a game on a week-to-week basis. But USC, I'm sorry, but I don't think you were supposed to be ranked in the first place. And every single game we've had with USC has had some sort of drama of some sorts these past couple of years. I mean, like if it wasn't for I've brought up the Minshew seasons plenty of times before, but if it wasn't for missing that kick and bad weather during the Apple Cup, we would have been undefeated that year. Okay, that's that year. And we took down Sam Darnold and the number 4 Trojans when they came over here too.
Yeah.
And it's just the point of, I think USC, you guys can stick with basketball. I don't think anyone's denying basketball. You guys, obviously are consistent enough to be impactful in the conference, but you guys almost lost to Arizona. Arizona was projected to go winless to some people, and you almost lost to them. So what is there to really say here? The Cougs lost to the 11th ranked team in the country, who at least deserve to be in the top 25, but you can't convince me that this is a scary top 25 team after their first 2 weeks of barely winning.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree to some extent because this team should be a top 25 team. And I don't know how much of this is just underperforming, how much of this is just a weird, season in general. But I mean, I thought this was going to be the best team in the Pac-12 going into this season because I think that they have the talent and they have the players to be able to do that. Slovis has had a bit of a down year, but I mean, he was great last year. They've got talent all over the place. So, if this team were to put it together and play, a good game, I don't think they've played a good game, maybe that Utah game, but, Utah had a terrible game. But I mean, they kind of screwed themselves over in those games. I mean, Arizona, if USC learns how to convert like a 4th and 1, then I think they kind of blow them out. So it's been a lot of mistakes. Like So, but I agree that this isn't some powerhouse team that I'm like, super scared of because they have, shown vulnerability. But I mean, Oregon was the same way. I think USC and Oregon are very close to in terms of competitiveness and talent. And Oregon made WSU look bad in the second half. So this is definitely a game that I think it will be close because USC loves to play close games. They love to give their opponent a chance. So I'm glad for that. But I mean, I've been saying it for a while. I don't think Clay Helton's a good coach, and I think that might be a lot of the reason why they aren't living up to their potential. But yeah, I mean, I think I mean, there's 3 games left. I'm picking WSU to win all of them. Like, I'm over this. I tried to be realistic against Oregon, and they WSU did lose. But like I said before, this is all hope. This is a season of the last 3 games are the season of hope. So I'm hopeful, and I think WSU is going to win. Um, I I want to know, do you have a score prediction? I've got for the first time I actually wrote one down beforehand. I thought about this before just in the moment. So I've really thought this one out. So do you have a score prediction?
I don't have one written out, but if I take into account some factors real quick on the spot here,
Do the
you know,
calculations in your head.
this is not going to be a shutout. It's not going to be a blowout. It's not going to be a low scoring game by any means. Both teams are going to put
Narrowing
up
in on it.
points.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably going 31-27 Cougars.
Oof. You're always close. You always say the first number you say is always one of mine, and it kind of freaks me out. But you never say the same one. I picked 31-30, and I added more onto it, and I said we're gonna see a Blake Mazza game-winning field goal because
Oof.
I love the
What a
guy.
way to win that game.
One
Yeah,
of my
that'd
one
be
of my
great.
predict one of my predictions I had that we didn't get to that I wrote about was that he's just gonna stay perfect, make everything right down the middle all year. He's amazing. Um, and like you mentioned, I don't want to call it a missed kick in 2018 because an offensive lineman blew his block on the field
Right.
goal. He would have
Yeah.
made it, so I don't blame him. I think
No.
he made like 50 something yarder in that game, and so I'm calling for some late game heroics, some close game stuff, just like the last 2 meetings. And I think Mazza has his moment. He's kicked a game winner before against Stanford. It wasn't a time expiring one. There's about 20 seconds left. I'm not calling, a buzzer beater here. I'm saying, under 30 seconds, I think he's going to kick it through the uprights and lead this team to victory. So I went even more. I think 31-30 with a Mazza game-winning field goal.
Well, I'll up you one. I think, yeah, well, you got Blake Mazza with a game-winning field goal. Would love to see that. Can't
Mm-hmm.
say that it's, unlikely to happen or anything, but I think Delora is going to break the 300-yard mark this game. He's kind of dabbled around with
He
the
did it.
250
He
range,
did it. He
but
did it against Oregon. He threw 321.
oh, yeah, that's right. You're right.
Yes,
So
it was
for some
about a
reason
year
that
ago, so I don't blame you for
yeah,
forgetting it.
for some reason
And
with that Oregon game, just the second half felt like such a dud compared to the first half, but
well, it was. It didn't feel
yeah,
like it. It was.
right. Uh, Dolores going to break the 300 mark. I bet you, if all goes well, we might see Borgie this weekend.
Mhm.
I won't put money on that. I'm sure
Yeah.
they're probably going to ease him back into the swing of
Hmm.
things. We'll see another 100-yard rushing game from McIntosh if that's the case,
Hmm.
because like I said before, he's been playing fantastic.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that we're not going to see as many drop balls as we have in the first 2 weeks.
Hmm.
Hopefully, the receiver coach has, put what put some butter on their hands or something to make it harder for them to catch it during practice or something, so they can actually
Hmm.
catch it during the game. But I think the offense is going to click and it's going to click well. The
Hmm.
defense is going to kind of be on their heels for a little bit, but they'll squeeze out a win in LA.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we were predicting this before, everything went wrong and the game against Stanford got canceled, but we were predicting the Jaden Delora kind of breakout performance in that game. So, carrying that over into this game, I think, if he does it, if he's able to do it here, if he's able to put up, 300 and three touchdowns or something like that, then I mean, that's a great game. Uh, his COVID, revenge tour. WCU's on a COVID revenge tour. That's what we're calling this episode. And the first stop on the COVID revenge tour is USC Los Angeles on a Sunday. some Sunday night football. If you don't feel
That's
like
not the
watching
NFL. Yeah.
no. So turn that on Sunday at 4:30. And that'll do it for us. I just want to remind you guys that you can find our written content exclusively on sportspac12.com, and you can follow them on Twitter at sportspac12. You can also find links to that written content on our website, dashsports.tv, and make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok at Dashsports TV. Lastly, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dashsports, where you can find all of our shows and clips. Thanks for tuning in. I've got a crossover with USC host Nathan Ackerman tomorrow at 8 p.m. So tune in for that. And then we'll be back here same time next week to talk about that great win over USC. So see you then. Go Cougs.